The galactic underdog. The crystalline spires of Harmonix Prime glittered like a fevered dream against the lavender sky, their translucent facades reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Commander Sarah Chen stood on a balcony overlooking the sprawling capital of the Galactic Confederation, her dress uniform feeling stiff and alien compared to the flowing, iridescent garments of the diplomats around her. It was the year 2250, and humanity had finally taken its place among the stars. After centuries of dreaming, decades of struggling, and years of tense negotiations, Earth had been granted membership in the Confederation, a coalition of advanced species that spanned a significant portion of the Milky Way. But as Sarah sipped from a flute of shimmering liquid that tasted vaguely of starlight and cinnamon, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were here more as a curiosity than an equal. The annual Concordance Gala was in full swing, a dizzying array of species mingling in what was supposed to be a celebration of unity and mutual respect. Sarah, as Earth's military attaché, had been sent to represent humanity's martial prowess. So far, she'd mostly been asked if humans had managed to stop killing each other yet. "You must admit, Commander," a willowy Aetherian diplomat was saying, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns, "your species' fixation on conflict is quaint." Sarah forced a diplomatic smile. "With respect, Emissary Xenixus, I believe you're confusing our history of conflict with an inability to wage effective war. There's a distinction." Xenixus waved a gossamer appendage dismissively. "Come now, we've all seen the reports. Your most advanced warships would be little more than target practice for a Zalaxian cruiser. And don't get me started on your pitiful energy weapons." Before Sarah could retort, a booming voice cut through the conversation. "Ha! The Aetherian speaks truth, for once." A hulking Zalaxian general shouldered his way into their circle, his scaled hide gleaming with ceremonial oils. "I've analyzed your Earth's military history. Primitive slug throwers and fusion bombs. Your children playing at war compared to the rest of the galaxy." Sarah felt her cheeks burn, a mixture of embarrassment and anger rising in her chest. She opened her mouth to defend humanity's honor, but was cut off by yet another voice. Now, General Krovac," purred a feline Meroian diplomat, her fur rippling in amused patterns. "Let's not be too harsh on our new friends. After all, they've only just figured out how to leave their gravity well. We should applaud their progress, meager as it is." Laughter rippled through the growing crowd of alien dignitaries. Sarah's hand tightened around her glass, knuckles white. She prepared for skepticism, even condescension, but this open mockery was pushing her to the brink. "If I may," she said, her voice cutting through the laughter with steel-edged politeness, "I think you're all underestimating humanity's capacity for warfare." General Krovac's yellow eyes narrowed. "Oh, and what makes you say that, little human?" Sarah set her glass down, squaring her shoulders. "Because war isn't just about technology. It's about adaptability, creativity, and the will to survive against all odds. Humanity has faced extinction-level events, fought itself to the brink of annihilation, and still clawed its way to the stars. We've turned our worst impulses into our greatest strengths." The crowd had gone quiet, a mixture of amusement and curiosity on their alien faces. Sarah pressed on, her voice gaining strength. "You mock our weapons, but forget that we've had to innovate with limited resources. You laugh at our ships, but ignore the fact that we've overcome gravity wells you consider impossible. And you dismiss our tactics without understanding the crucible of constant conflict that forged them." General Krovac's amused expression had faded, replaced by something closer to annoyance. "Pretty words, Commander, but wars aren't won with speeches." "You're right," Sarah said, a glint in her eye. "They're won through action. So why don't we put it to the test?" A murmur ran through the crowd. The Meroian diplomat's ears perked up. "What are you suggesting?" Sarah gestured to a holographic display nearby, typically used for showcasing art or scientific achievements. "A war game simulation. Right here, right now. Me against any of you, or all of you if you prefer. Let's see how humanity's primitive tactics hold up. For a moment, there was silence. Then General Krovac burst out laughing. You can't be serious. It would be like pitting a Grolnak cub against a seasoned void hunter. Then you have nothing to lose, Sarah countered. Unless, of course, you're afraid of being embarrassed by a primitive human. The challenge hung in the air, electric. Sarah could see the wheels turning in the alien diplomats' minds, weighing the potential entertainment value against the minimal perceived risk. Finally, Emissary Xenixus spoke. I, for one, am curious. It could be instructive for our new allies to see the gap they must overcome. I say we indulge the commander's request. General Krovac snorted. Fine. It'll be a good laugh, if nothing else. I'll even handicap myself. You can have a fleet twice the size of mine, human. You'll need it. As the diplomats crowded around the holographic display, technicians quickly reconfigured it for military simulations. Sarah felt a bead of sweat trickle down her back. She talked a big game, but the truth was, humanity was outclassed in almost every technological aspect. If she was going to win this, it would take every ounce of creativity and unconventional thinking she could muster. The simulation flickered to life, showing two fleets facing off in a star system with multiple planets and asteroid fields. Sarah quickly assessed her forces, a motley collection of ships that accurately represented Earth's current naval capacity. Across the simulated battlefield, General Krovac's fleet gleamed, each ship a technological marvel that outclassed her entire armada. Standard victory conditions, the Zalaxian growled. Destruction or surrender of the enemy fleet. Shall we begin? Sarah nodded, her mind racing through historical battles, guerrilla tactics, and every scrap of information she gleaned about Confederation military doctrine. Ready when you are, General. The simulation started, and immediately Krovac's fleet began a textbook-perfect advance, their formation optimized for both offense and defense. Sarah, however, did something unexpected. She split her fleet into dozens of smaller groups, scattering them across the system in what looked like a chaotic retreat. Running already, Krovac sneered. I expected at least token resistance. Sarah said nothing, focused intently on the display. As Krovac's fleet moved to engage her scattered forces, she put her plan into action. Smaller ships darted out from behind planets and asteroids, making suicide runs on the Zalaxian fleet's support vessels. Simultaneously, other groups began laying clouds of self-replicating mines in the paths of the larger capital ships. Krovac frowned, adjusting his strategy to deal with these annoyances, but every time he adapted, Sarah changed tactics. One moment her ships were ramming his at FTL speeds, the next, they were using concentrated energy bursts to trigger solar flares from the system's star, playing havoc with his sensors. What is this madness? Krovac growled, his earlier amusement gone. You're not even trying to win, just create chaos. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Oh, I'm trying to win, General. I'm just not playing by your rules. As if on cue, alarms blared across Krovac's simulated fleet. While he'd been distracted by Sarah's harassing tactics, a significant portion of her forces had maneuvered into the system's dense asteroid field. Now they were launching those asteroids at relativistic speeds towards the heart of the Zalaxian armada. Krovac's hands flew across the controls, desperately trying to evade the incoming mountain-sized projectiles. But it was too late. In the simulation, ship after ship winked out of existence, reduced to scattered atoms by the kinetic bombardment. Within minutes, it was over. The remnants of Krovac's once proud fleet drifted powerless, while Sarah's battered but victorious ships moved in to accept their surrender. A stunned silence fell over the gathered diplomats. Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, then turned to face the shocked aliens. As I said, she began, but was cut off by a piercing alarm that echoed through the entire complex. Red emergency lights began flashing, and the holographic display shifted to a galactic map. A cold feeling settled in Sarah's stomach as she saw dozens of systems pulsing in angry red along the Confederation's border. This was no simulation. "We're under attack," Emissary Xenixus whispered, his bioluminescence fading to a dull flicker. "But how? By whom?" As if in answer, the display zoomed in on one of the besieged systems. Sarah's blood ran cold as she saw the attackers, writhing masses of energy, shifting in and out of reality as they tore through Confederation defenses like tissue paper. General Krovac, his earlier bravado evaporated, turned to Sarah with a look of grim respect. "It seems, Commander, that the galaxy has decided to test your species' warfighting capabilities far sooner than any of us anticipated." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities and strategies. "So it has, General. So it has." Chaos on the frontier. The Confederation War Room was a maelstrom of activity. Holographic displays flickered with real-time battle data from a dozen systems, each one a testimony to the devastating effectiveness of the unknown enemy. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the central table, her earlier victory in the war games simulation feeling hollow in the face of real, unprecedented destruction. "They're calling themselves the Voidborn," General Krovac growled, his scales a dull gray from stress. "Energy beings from some damned quantum rift. Our weapons pass right through them." Sarah watched as footage from the front lines played out before them. Confederation ships, among the most advanced in the known galaxy, fired salvo after salvo into the writhing masses of energy that were the Voidborn. Their weapons, plasma lances, graviton beams, even antimatter warheads, seemed to have no effect. "How are they attacking our ships?" Sarah asked, leaning in to study the footage more closely. The Zelaxian scientist, his tendrils twitching nervously, spoke up. "They seem to be able to phase partially into our reality, disrupting energy fields and molecular bonds. Ships aren't being destroyed so much as coming apart at the seams." The implications were terrifying. An enemy that could ignore conventional defenses and weaponry, while simultaneously unraveling matter at will. Sarah's mind raced, trying to find some angle, some weakness they could exploit. "What about physical weapons?" she asked suddenly. "Projectiles? Kinetic energy weapons?" The gathered alien leaders looked at her with a mixture of confusion and disdain. "Commander Chen," Emissary Xenixus said, his bioluminescence pulsing with barely contained frustration, "I don't think you understand the severity of the situation. These beings exist partially outside our dimension. Throwing rocks at them isn't going to solve anything." Sarah bit back a retort. Now wasn't the time for interspecies squabbling. She turned her attention back to the battle footage, watching intently as a Voidborn entity phased through the hull of a Confederation cruiser. As the ship began to break apart, she noticed something odd. "Wait," she said, "can you replay that last bit? Focus on the Voidborn as it exits the ship." The footage rewound and zoomed in. As the energy being passed through the disintegrating hull, its form seemed to flicker and distort momentarily. "There," Sarah pointed. "It's affected by the ship's electromagnetic fields as it passes through. They're not completely intangible." The Zelaxian scientist blinked his compound eyes rapidly, a sign of intense thought. Yes, I see it too. The Voidborn are disrupted by intense electromagnetic fields. But our standard EM weapons are designed for disabling electronics, not affecting energy beings." Sarah's mind was already racing ahead. "On Earth, we developed EMP weapons centuries ago as a defensive measure against nuclear attacks. If we could adapt that technology, scale it up." "Preposterous," interrupted a Meroian admiral, her fur standing on end. "You expect us to turn to primitive human weapons in our darkest hour? The very notion is absurd." General Krovac, however, was stroking his scaled chin thoughtfully. "The human may be onto something. Our conventional tactics are failing. Perhaps it's time to try something unconventional." A heated debate broke out among the Confederation leaders. Sarah tried to interject, to explain her idea further, but her voice was lost in the growing argument. As the aliens bickered, another system winked out on the galactic map. Millions more lives, gone in an instant. Frustrated and seeing no other option, Sarah made a decision. She quietly slipped out of the war room, making her way through the winding corridors of the Confederation headquarters. She had a plan, but she'd need help to pull it off. She found what she was looking for in one of the auxiliary research labs. A young Zalaxian scientist was poring over data streams, his tendrils twitching with nervous energy. "Xylix, right?" Sarah said as she entered the lab. "I saw you at the diplomatic gala. You seemed interested in human history." The Zalaxian looked up, surprised. "Commander Chen." Yes, that's right. Your species' rapid technological development is fascinating. But shouldn't you be in the War Council?" Sarah smiled grimly. "The War Council is busy arguing. I'm more interested in acting. I have an idea that might help against the Voidborn, but I'll need your help." "It's not exactly authorized." Xylix's compound eyes widened. "You mean go against the Confederation's orders? That's our best shot at saving lives," Sarah finished for him. "I know it's asking a lot, but every moment we waste, another world falls. Are you with me?" For a long moment, Xylix was silent, his tendrils writhing in agitation. Then slowly he nodded. "What do you need?" Over the next few hours, Sarah and Xylix worked feverishly. They commandeered a small scout ship, ostensibly for emergency research purposes, and began modifying its systems. Sarah's knowledge of Earth's old EMP weapons, combined with Xylix's understanding of advanced Confederation technology, led to the creation of something entirely new. "It's not elegant." Xylix chittered as they made the final adjustments. "But the theory is sound. This should create an electromagnetic pulse orders of magnitude more powerful than anything your people ever developed. If the Voidborn are as susceptible to EM fields as you believe, then we might just have a fighting chance," Sarah finished. She looked out the view screen at the bustling shipyards of Harmonix Prime. "We'll need to test it on an actual Voidborn to be sure, which means we have to reach the front lines," Xylix said, his voice a mix of terror and excitement. "The nearest combat zone is the Helios cluster. It's under heavy attack, but if we use the scout ship's stealth systems..." Sarah nodded grimly. "Plot a course. We'll deal with the consequences later." As they prepared for departure, alarms began blaring throughout the shipyard. Sarah's comm unit crackled to life with General Krovak's voice. "Chen, where the hell are you? The War Council has issued orders for a full retreat to the core systems. All ships are to fall back immediately." Sarah exchanged a look with Xylix. This was it, the point of no return. If they launched now, they'd be disobeying direct orders. But if they didn't, their chance to test the weapon would be lost. "I'm sorry, General," Sarah said into the comm, "but falling back isn't an option. We might have a way to fight the Voidborn, but we need to reach the front lines to test it." "Have you lost your mind?" Krovak roared. "That's a direct violation of." Sarah cut the communication. Xylix launched the ship. Now. The young Zalaxian hesitated for just a moment before his tendrils flew across the control panel. The scout ship hummed to life, lifting off from the docking bay. As they accelerated away from Harmonix Prime, Sarah watched the glittering capital shrink behind them. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the very real possibility of court-martial, or worse. But she pushed those thoughts aside. Right now, all that mattered was reaching the Helios cluster and testing their desperately cobbled-together weapon. "Commander," Xylix said, his voice tight with tension, "I'm picking up pursuit craft launching from the capital. They're hailing us, ordering us to return immediately." Sarah's jaw clenched. "Engage stealth systems and set course for the Helios cluster, maximum speed. With any luck, we'll be in and out before they even realize we've gone." As the stars streaked into lines around them, Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Humanity had survived and thrived by doing the unexpected, by refusing to give up even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the brink. The fate of billions hung in the balance, and Sarah Chen, along with one brave Zalaxian scientist, was about to throw the dice on the biggest gamble in human history, turning the impossible into reality. The scout ship dropped out of FTL on the fringes of the Helios cluster, alarms blaring as sensors detected the chaos ahead. Commander Sarah Chen and Zilix stared in horror at the scene unfolding before them. The once thriving colony world, Helios Prime, was surrounded by a swirling maelstrom of void-born entities, their ethereal forms rippling with otherworldly energy. By the cosmic egg, Zilix chittered, his tendrils curling in distress. "We're too late. The colony's outer defenses are already breached." Sarah's jaw clenched as she took in the tactical readouts. Confederation ships were scattered throughout the system, many drifting lifelessly, their crews presumably lost to the Voidborn's reality-warping touch. But amidst the destruction, she noticed something unexpected. "Look there." She pointed to a sector near the planet's southern hemisphere. "That group of ships, they're still fighting. And is that a planetary defense cannon?" Zelix magnified the image, his compound eyes widening in surprise. "Impossible. Those are civilian vessels, not military. And that cannon, it looks like it's been cobbled together from mining equipment. And are those fusion reactors?" A grim smile spread across Sarah's face. "Looks like the colonists decided not to go quietly. Zilix, get me a communication channel to that group. Let's hope they're in a mood to accept some unorthodox help." After a tense moment of static, a gruff voice crackled through the speakers. "Unidentified vessel. This is Acting Governor Kira Volkov of Helios Prime. If you're here to help, you're late. If you're here to evacuate us, don't bother. We're not leaving our home." Sarah leaned forward, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Governor Volkov, this is Commander Sarah Chen of Earth Force. We're here with a prototype weapon that might just turn the tide. But we need your help to test it." There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. "An experimental weapon. From Earth. No offense, Commander, but we've seen how well Confederation tech works against these things. What makes you think your prototype will fare any better?" "Because sometimes, Governor," Sarah replied, her eyes fixed on the swirling Voidborn, "the oldest solutions are the best ones. We're going to hit them with the biggest electromagnetic pulse this galaxy has ever seen. But we need to get close, real close." Another pause, longer this time. When Volkov spoke again, there was a hint of desperate hope in her voice. "Well, Commander, I suppose we got nothing left to lose. What do you need us to do?" Over the next frantic minutes, Sarah outlined her plan. The colonists' jury-rigged defense cannon would fire a concentrated burst of plasma, creating a momentary corridor through the Voidborn swarm. Sarah and Zilix would use that opening to get close enough to detonate their EMP device. As they maneuvered into position, Zilix's tendrils danced nervously over the controls. "Commander, I feel I should point out, the odds of this succeeding are astronomically low." Sarah nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Noted, Zilix. But you know what humanity's good at, beating the odds. Now, let's make history." The next few moments were a blur of motion and light. The colonists' cannon fired, a lance of superheated plasma cutting through the Voidborn like a scythe. Sarah gunned the engines, pushing their small craft to its limits as they dove into the breach. Voidborn entities swirled around them, their otherworldly forms distorting reality itself. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, systems flickering as the being's presence disrupted delicate electronics. "Now, Zilix," Sarah shouted as they reached the epicenter of the swarm. "Hit it." The Zalaxian scientist slammed his tendril down on the activation switch. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a silent flash that seemed to bend light itself, the EMP burst forth. The effect was immediate and breathtaking. The Voidborn closest to the ship writhed in apparent agony, their energy forms fluctuating wildly. But what happened next defied all expectations. As the electromagnetic pulse expanded outward, the Voidborn began to solidify. Their ethereal bodies took on substance, becoming tangible, visible to the naked eye. Incredible. Xylix breathed, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. The EMP isn't just disrupting them, it's forcing them fully into our reality. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. Quick, broadcast to all Confederation and colonial forces. The Voidborn are vulnerable. Use physical weapons, projectiles, anything solid. The response was immediate. The colonial ships, already primed for unconventional warfare, unleashed a barrage of makeshift projectiles. Mining charges, pieces of space debris, even sealed canisters of highly pressurized gases. The few remaining Confederation ships, catching on quickly, switched to kinetic weapons and missile barrages. For the first time since the invasion began, the Voidborn were on the defensive. Unable to phase out of reality, they found themselves vulnerable to the very weapons they had previously ignored. The swarm began to break apart, individual entities fleeing or falling to the newfound assault. As the tide of battle turned, Sarah noticed something odd about the Voidborn's movements. Xylix, are you seeing this? They're not just retreating randomly. They're converging on something. The Xylaxian focused their sensors on the point of convergence. There's some kind of spatial anomaly there. It looks like, by the cosmic egg, it's a rift. A tear in the fabric of space-time itself. Sarah's eyes widened as realization dawned. It's not an invasion force. It's a refugee fleet. They're running from something. Before they could process this revelation, a massive Voidborn entity, easily dwarfing the others, emerged from the rift. Unlike its brethren, this being seemed unaffected by the lingering effects of the EMP. Its voice, if it could be called that, resonated directly in Sarah and Xylix's minds. The sensation was overwhelming, a mixture of alien concepts and raw emotion. F-O-R-B-A-R-E-R-S, creators. U-A-A-V-R-E-Q-R-N-T. Sarah and Xylix exchanged bewildered looks. I don't understand. Sarah managed to say, "We're not your creators. We've never encountered your kind before." The entity's form rippled, a gesture that somehow conveyed both confusion and recognition. Not you. The others. The ones who see me before. Their essence lives in you. Fragments of images flashed through their minds. Ancient starships, beings of light and energy. A terrible war that spanned dimensions. Sarah gasped as she began to piece it together. You're saying, the humans, that all the species of the Confederation, were descendants of some ancient race that created your kind? Yes, long ago, before the great Sundring, before the Nullifiers came. Xylix's tendrils curled in agitation. Nullifiers? What air? The entity's form suddenly pulsed with urgency. No time. They EFOLO. We FLET. But they pursue. The RAFT KNNOTB CLOST. They come. As if on cue, the spatial rift began to widen, reality itself seeming to scream in protest. Through the tear, Sarah caught glimpses of something. Shapes that defied comprehension, beings that seemed to devour light and matter alike. The Voidborn Elder's voice resonated one last time. We will fight, but you must prepare. The war of creation begins anevo. With that, the entity retreated, joining its brethren in a defensive formation around the rift. Sarah and Xylix watched in awe as the beings they had been fighting moments ago now stood as a last line of defense against an even greater threat. As alerts blared and communications channels exploded with panicked chatter, Sarah took a deep breath. She turned to Xylix, seeing her own mix of fear and determination reflected in his compound eyes. "Well," she said, a wry smile playing at her lips, I guess we just changed the stakes of this war. Think the Confederation is ready to start taking humanity's ideas seriously." Xylix's tendrils waved in what Sarah had come to recognize as his species' equivalent of nervous laughter. "Commander, I think the entire galaxy is about to learn just how unprepared they are. But if there's one thing I've learned about humans, you tend to thrive in impossible situations." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with plans and strategies. "Then let's hope we can teach the rest of the galaxy to do the same. Because something tells me we're going to need every trick, every crazy idea, and every ounce of that human spirit to face what's coming." As they turned their battered ship back towards Confederation space, the weight of their discoveries hung heavy in the air. The impossible had become reality, and reality itself was about to be tested like never before. The war for the very nature of existence had begun, and humanity, the unlikely underdogs of the galactic stage, were about to show the universe what they were truly capable of. Rewriting the rules of war. The Galactic Confederation's central chamber was in uproar. Representatives from 100 species argued vociferously, their translator implants struggling to keep up with the cacophony of alien languages. At the center of it all stood Commanders Sarah Chen and Xylix, their recent actions at the Helios cluster having turned the political landscape on its head. "Order. We will have order," the Confederation president, a towering Aetherian, thundered. As the chamber gradually quieted, he turned his luminous gaze to Sarah. "Commander Chen, your actions were reckless, insubordinate, and in clear violation of Confederation protocols." Sarah stood her ground, chin raised. "With all due respect, Mr. President, those same actions saved the Helios cluster and provided us with crucial intelligence about both the Voidborn and the coming threat." "Be that as it may," General Krovac interjected, his scales flushed with a mix of anger and begrudging respect. "We cannot simply ignore the chain of command. The very fabric of our military structure is woefully unprepared for what's coming." Sarah cut in. She gestured to the holographic display showing the rift in the Helios cluster, now fortified by Voidborn defenders. "The nullifiers aren't going to wait for us to file the proper paperwork. We need to act now, and we need to act decisively." The chamber erupted again, but this time a new voice cut through the din. "I agree with the human." All eyes turned to Vexolia, the Meroian admiral who had previously dismissed Sarah's ideas. "Our conventional tactics failed against the Voidborn. We cannot make the same mistake with the nullifiers." Murmurs of agreement began to spread. The president raised a bioluminescent tendril for silence. "What do you propose, Commander Chen?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment she'd been preparing for since their return from Helios. A new task force, one that throws out the old rulebook and embraces unconventional warfare. "We bring together the best minds, the most adaptable warriors, from every species in the Confederation. No idea is too crazy, no tactic too unorthodox." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Voidborn called us the descendants of their creators. That means somewhere in our collective history, in our cultures and our instincts, we have the knowledge to fight this war. We just need to rediscover it." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, voices began to speak up in support. Species that had been at odds for centuries found common ground in the face of this existential threat. "Very well," the president said finally. "Commander Chen, you will lead this task force. But know this, the fate of not just the Confederation, but possibly all of reality, rests on your shoulders. Do not make us regret this decision." As the chamber adjourned, Sarah felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. She'd gotten what she wanted, but the real challenge was only beginning. Over the next few weeks, the newly formed Vanguard Initiative took shape. Their base of operations was a massive space station hastily constructed in neutral territory, dubbed the Forge for its role in shaping the future of galactic warfare. Sarah stood in the Forge's central command hub, surveying the diverse group of beings that had answered her call. There was Xylix, of course, now heading up the science division. Kira Volkov, the tough-as-nails governor from Helios Prime, had brought her expertise in improvised weaponry and guerrilla tactics. A Zalexian battleships named Thor had joined, his ability to predict enemy movements seconds before they happened proving invaluable. Gerlach, a Cronin weapons master, brought knowledge of ancient fighting techniques that predated modern technology. But it was the newest arrival that drew everyone's attention. A void-born emissary, who had taken the name Whisper, floated in a containment field that allowed it to maintain physical form. Its presence was a constant reminder of the stakes they faced. "All right, people," Sarah addressed the group. "We've got the go-ahead and the resources. Now we need results. The nullifiers could come through that rift any day now. Ideas." Kira stepped forward, her cybernetic eye whirring as it projected a holographic display. "We've been analyzing the makeshift weapons that worked against the Voidborn. There's a common thread: unpredictability. The more chaotic and varied our attacks, the more effective they were." Xylix chittered in agreement. "Yes, and our latest simulations suggest the nullifiers operate on principles that defy our understanding of physics. They don't just break the rules, they rewrite them. So we need to be more unpredictable than beings that rewrite reality," Sarah mused. "Whisper, what can you tell us about fighting the nullifiers?" The Voidborn's thoughts resonated directly in their minds. The Creator's Foguji with light and song, weapons that shape the reality of. Gerlach growled, his stony skin grating as he shifted. "Bah, riddles and mysticism. We need solid strategies, not ancient legends." But Sarah's eyes lit up. "No, wait. Whisper, are you saying the ancients used some kind of reality-shaping technology? Weapons that could alter the fundamental laws of physics?" "Yes, but the Gano Duelig way is lost, scattered across time and space." Thor, the Zalaxian, suddenly stiffened. "Commander, I'm sensing a possibility, a path." His eyes glowed as he accessed his precognitive abilities. "There are artifacts left behind by the ancients, if we could find them." Sarah nodded, her mind racing. A scavenger hunt across the galaxy, looking for pieces of the most powerful weapons ever created, all while preparing for an invasion by reality-devouring entities. She couldn't help but grin. Sounds like a job for the Vanguard. Over the next few days, the Forge became a hive of frenetic activity. Traditional military doctrine was tossed out the window as the team embraced a new hybrid approach to warfare. Kira and Gerlach worked on combining primitive weapons with advanced technology, creating guns that fired miniature black holes and swords that could cut through the fabric of space-time. Xylix and a team of scientists pored over ancient myths and legends from 100 worlds, looking for clues about the locations of the reality-shaping artifacts. Thor trained a corps of shins from various species, enhancing their natural abilities with technology to create a network of prescient warriors. And at the center of it all was Sarah, coordinating, strategizing, and pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. She spent hours in deep conversation with Whisper, trying to understand the nature of the nullifiers and the cosmic war they were about to reignite. As the days wore on, reports came in from across Confederation space. Strange anomalies were appearing near the Helios cluster rift. Reality itself seemed to be fraying at the edges. During a rare moment of quiet, Sarah stood alone in her quarters, staring out at the stars. The weight of her responsibility pressed down on her, heavier than ever. A soft chime announced a visitor. It was Xylix, his tendrils curled in what Sarah had come to recognize as a sign of concern. "Commander," he said, his translator conveying a tone of apprehension. "The latest simulations are not encouraging. Even with our new strategies, our chances of victory are low." Sarah finished for him. She turned from the window, a determined glint in her eye. "Xylix, do you know why humans have survived as long as we have, despite all the challenges we faced?" The Zalaxian tilted his head quizzically. Because we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Sarah continued. We look at impossible odds and see a challenge to overcome. We face extinction-level threats and come out stronger. She walked over to a desk where plans and schematics were scattered. The nullifiers think they can rewrite the rules of reality. Fine. We'll just have to rewrite them first. Xylix's compound eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of growing excitement. You really think we can win this, don't you? Sarah smiled, the fire of determination burning in her eyes. I think we're about to show the universe why you should never underestimate humanity, or any species for that matter. She picked up a schematic for a reality-shaping artifact. Now let's go make the impossible possible. As they left the room, alarms began to blare throughout the forge. The voice of Cathor came over the comms, tense but controlled. Commander to the bridge. We're detecting massive energy spikes near the Helios Rift. I think they're coming through. Sarah and Xylix exchanged a look. The moment they had been preparing for was here. As they raced towards the bridge, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. The greatest war in the history of the universe was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show its true capabilities. The rules of war were about to be rewritten. And this time, humanity would be holding the pen. The universe holds its breath. The Forge's command center thrummed with tense energy as Commander Sarah Chen strode in, Xylix close behind. The main view screen showed a terrifying sight. The spatial rift near the Helios cluster was expanding rapidly, reality itself seeming to tear at the seams. Status report, Sarah barked, her eyes scanning the various holographic readouts. Thor, his psychic amplifiers glowing, spoke first. The nullifiers are breaching the rift, Commander. I'm sensing. It's like nothing I've ever experienced. They're not just coming through. They're rewriting the laws of physics as they advance. Kira Volkov, her cybernetic eye whirring frantically, added, Our long-range sensors are going haywire. Gravity, electromagnetic fields, even the flow of time. It's all fluctuating wildly near the rift. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. This was the moment they'd been preparing for. All right, people, this is not a drill. Initiate Operation Cosmic Rewrite. Whisper, signal the Voidborn. It's time to see if our alliance holds. As the command center erupted into action, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. From being dismissed as primitive upstarts to leading the charge against an existential threat, humanity had come a long way in a short time. Commander, Xylix chittered urgently, the first wave of nullifiers has fully materialized. There by the cosmic egg, they're impossible to describe. The view screen zoomed in on the entities emerging from the rift. They defied comprehension. Shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could perceive. Colors that had no place in the known spectrum. Movements that violated every law of physics. Remember your training, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the eldritch horror unfolding before them. Don't try to understand them. Focus on your tasks. Grilak growled from his weapons station. The reality warping cannons are charged and ready, Commander. Just give the word, and we'll show these abominations what real chaos looks like. Sarah nodded. All ships, this is Commander Chen. Commence attack pattern Omega. And may whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all. The battle that ensued was unlike anything the universe had ever witnessed. Confederation ships, retrofitted with technology that blended the ancient and the cutting edge, engaged the nullifiers in a dance of impossibility. Beams of coherent probability lanced out from the forge, temporarily solidifying regions of space-time and trapping nullifiers in bubbles of fixed reality. Voidborn warriors phased in and out of existence, using their quantum nature to confuse and disorient the invaders. On the fringes of the battle, smaller craft piloted by the most daring volunteers deployed the artifacts they'd recovered. Each activation rewrote a small portion of reality, creating zones where the nullifier's power was diminished. But for every victory, there was a setback. Entire ships winked out of existence as nullifiers rewrote the history of their construction. Brave soldiers found themselves suddenly fighting for the other side as their very minds were altered. In the heart of the forge, Sarah and her core team fought a different kind of battle. They were the conductors of this impossible orchestra, coordinating strategies that evolved moment by moment. "The nullifiers are adapting to our reality anchors," Xylix reported, his tendrils flying over holographic controls. "We need to randomize the quantum fluctuations." Sarah nodded. "Do it. Thor, I need predictions on their next move." Kira, prep the solar flare inducers. "If we can't beat them with order, we'll drown them in chaos." As the battle raged on, it became clear that despite their preparations, despite the impossible weapons and tactics they'd developed, they were fighting a losing battle. The nullifiers were simply too alien, too powerful to be defeated by conventional means, even when those conventions included rewriting reality itself. In a quiet moment amidst the chaos, Whisper's thoughts resonated in Sarah's mind. "There is an OTAR way, but it may be too high." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Tell me." The plan Whisper outlined was audacious, borderline insane. It required sacrificing the forge itself, using its massive power core to create a feedback loop in the fabric of reality. The resulting cascade would seal the rift and trap the nullifiers between dimensions, but it would also strand whoever initiated the sequence. For a long moment, Sarah was silent, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. Then, with a grim smile, she turned to her team. "Well, folks, it looks like we got one last trick up our sleeve, but I'll need volunteers for a one-way trip." To her surprise and pride, every hand in the command center raised without hesitation. Humans, Zolaxians, Voidborn. In that moment, they were all united in their determination to save the universe, no matter the cost. "It's been an honor serving with all of you," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Now, let's go make history." The next few minutes were a blur of activity, as the main fleet engaged in a desperate holding action. Sarah led a small team to the forge's power core. Xylix and Kira worked feverishly to modify the systems, while Thor used his precognitive abilities to anticipate and counter the nullifiers' attempts to stop them. As the final preparations were made, Sarah opened a channel to the entire Confederation fleet. "This is Commander Chen. In a few moments, we're going to end this war. But I need every ship to generate as much chaos as possible. Use every weird, unpredictable tactic you can think of. The laws of physics are more like guidelines right now, so let's break them all." The response was immediate and awe-inspiring. Ships began performing maneuvers that should have torn them apart. Weapons fired impossibilities made manifest. Some crews even started broadcasting Earth music, everything from classical symphonies to death metal, using it to create patterns in the very fabric of space-time. As the universe descended into beautiful, orchestrated chaos, Sarah placed her hand on the activation panel. She looked at her team, aliens who had become closer than family, and smiled, ready to rewrite the ending of this story. With a collective nod, they initiated the sequence. The forge's power core began to overload, reality itself buckling around them. The rift, caught in the feedback loop, started to collapse in on itself, dragging the nullifiers with it. In the final moments, as the laws of physics went haywire around them, Sarah saw something incredible. The chaos they had unleashed wasn't just confusing the nullifiers, it was changing them. The entities that had sought to impose their version of reality on the universe were themselves being rewritten by the sheer, unbridled creativity and determination of the united species. As the rift sealed and the forge began to phase out of normal space-time, Sarah's last communication to the fleet was filled with laughter. "Remember this day. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity and every other species out there. We don't just break the rules. We rewrite them." The forge vanished in a blaze of light that rewrote the very stars. When the cosmic dust settled, the nullifiers were gone, the rift was sealed, and the universe had been fundamentally changed. In the years that followed, the legend of Commander Sarah Chen and her impossible victory grew. The Galactic Confederation, once dismissive of humanity, now looked to Earth as a source of innovation and unconventional thinking. The lines between science and magic, between the primitive and the advanced, had been forever blurred. And somewhere, in a pocket of reality between dimensions, a small team of heroes from across the galaxy continued their greatest adventure, finding new ways to defy the impossible and rewrite the rules of existence itself. The universe, it seemed, would never underestimate the power of human ingenuity or the strength found in diversity ever again.